slides present the PowerPoint presentation today. So, Dr. Nebu, you can start the session. Okay.
Yeah, Debu, will you please hold for 1 minute? 1 minute, please. Yeah, 1 minute, please.
Okay. Dr. Nebu, are you there?
Hello. Hello.
You can start the session, Doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank all the officials of IHMA, especially Debu, for arranging this session. So I've been already introduced. So I completed my BHMS from Athurasramam College, Kottayam, and MD in Repertory from Government Homeopathic Medical College, Trivandrum. So I started my career with the help of IHMA. IHMA helped me a lot, especially as regards taking classes. My first classes were with IHMA, and still I continue with my relation with IHMA. So for today, the subject we are dealing with is differentiation of mind rubrics. I think all of you can hear me properly, right?
Yeah, it's audible now. No problem.
Okay. Okay. So let's start the session. Repertory is a tool to find a remedy, and rubrics are the language of repertory. That we all know. We have studied from our final BHMS time. It is essential for a scientific homeopathy practitioner to have a good understanding of the rubrics of repertory. It is like some people say that repertory is not essential for practice. Maybe right, if you are well versed with Medica, there is no need of repertory. For example, if you take a case and you are confirm that remedy that comes into your mind is the correct similibum, there is no need to take a repertory. Repertory is not a tool to make your prescription scientific. Actually, it's a tool to reach at a similibum among the ocean of Medica. There are a lot of medicines in the Medica, but we have to select a single remedy for a patient. So, repertory is a tool to help us to select such a medicine. As repertories are upgraded constantly, one has to differentiate between the various rubrics with very similar meanings. Although it is safer to combine the rubrics, when two or more rubrics are very difficult to differentiate, it will result in an analysis with more number of medicines, and the final differentiation will cost more time. Some people say that if you are doubtful about a particular rubric, especially mental rubric, it's better to combine. Yeah, there is no problem with combining the rubrics. But the problem is that our aim while using repertory is to sharpen our prescription. So if we are, if it is possible to arrive at a remedy rubric with minimum number of medicine, it will definitely help in the final prescription. But if we are combining some rubrics, what happens is that the rubric becomes larger, and so a final prescription will be more difficult. So the first repertory.
Doctor, I think you are not audible now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you just plug this take off the
yeah.
Can you take off the wire and just retook that?
Yeah.
കുത്താൻ പറ്റുമോ? ഇല്ല, അത് വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നില്ല. ഒന്ന് നൂലിട്ട് കുത്താമോ?
Okay. If it's audible now, is it audible now? Debu.
Hello.
Hello, Debu. Is it audible now?
Yeah, it's okay. Okay.
So
okay.
So as the repertories are upgraded constantly, we have to sharpen our knowledge too. So as we all know, the first repertory is Borneosian repertory. So we have studied from the beginning, there are only 7 plus 8, 15 rubrics in the mind and sensorium chapters of Borneosian repertory. So combining certain rubrics when we are not sure actually bring back to these olden days. Actually, as repertory is becoming more and more advanced, we have to sharpen our prescription. So we have to find the correct rubric. So I suggest if wherever possible, try to probe rubric so that we can find a smaller rubric for the analysis. One example that I would like to tell is loquacity. Whenever I think about loquacity, the first medicine that comes into our mind is lachesis, right? But there are a lot of medicines under loquacity in the rubric. I think more than 20 rubrics. So selecting a rubric loquacity, we won't be getting anywhere. But if you look at the sub-rubrics and the related rubrics are like cross-references, we have to differentiate whether it is expansive or whether it is communicative or something like that. So when we consider expansive is a rubric that can be used for persons who would like to expand their description. But for example, when they say about their travel, they like to expand. Or when they explain about their cinema that they have gone, they start from the beginning. That's the rubric expansive. But if we take loquacious for this rubric, this patient, suppose such a patient comes to you and you take loquacious for this patient, you will be wandering away from the prescription. So we have to be precise in selecting the rubric. And but we have to be very cautious because we have to probe till we get a correct symptom, not further. Because, for example, if somebody presents with a fear of dogs, there may be a history of dog bite in his history, but if there is a symptom clearly present, we have to take the symptom, whether or not there is a past history of dog bite. Because In psychoanalysis, what they do is they probe why these symptoms arises. But for us, the differentiation stops when we reach at a final symptom. We don't have to find what is the reason for this. If there is a symptom, you have to select a rubric and not further. That's the difference between psychoanalysis and homeopathy case taking. Okay, now I've said in the first sentence itself, repertory is a tool and rubrics are the language of repertory. A carefully selected rubric itself will represent the personality of the patient, the pathology of the disease, the miasm of the patient. This is more clear when differentiating mental symptoms. However, general symptoms and particulars must also be differentiated. See, there are very close running rubrics in the repertory, both in the mental symptom and the particulars in the generals. But we have to think that if we are going to combine all these rubrics, what is the purpose of all these rubrics? Have you ever thought of that? So some rubrics are very similar in the meaning, but different set of medicines are maybe there. So actually what happens is that even though they are similar in outlook, there may be some difference in the actual meaning. That is a differentiation of rubrics. It can be seen in general symptoms and particular symptoms, but it's mostly seen in mental symptoms, and that is why we are selecting for today's rubric differentiation of mind rubrics. Many people, especially when they come out of the college, they have a foolish idea that every patient should be having a mental symptom to take a case. Actually, this is a wrong decision, wrong idea. Mental symptom is not essential for every disease. A symptom should be converted to rubric only if it is clearly present in the patient. If there is no mental symptom, we don't have to worry about the mind rubric, and we have to select a remedy based on the generals and particulars. If generals are not there, we must be taking the particular symptoms alone. As far as mental symptoms are concerned, it might be a peculiar character of the patient or a recent change in the behavior. I must always say overemphasis should not be given to mental symptoms, but if there is a clear symptom present in the patient, we have to take the mental symptom. It might be a peculiar character of the patient. For example, fastidious. Fastidious is the rubric that is inherent to the patient. A patient may not be expressing this symptom, but from the bystanders or from other people, we get the symptom, and it's a peculiar character of the patient. But sadness, the symptom we take for depression is sadness. Sadness is may not be inherent; it may be an acquiring symptom, but we have to select the symptom depending on the severity or intensity. Overemphasis must not be given to mental symptom, but as we all know, in chronic diseases, the mental symptoms take a pivotal role in the selection of final medicine. One of the important literature on differentiation of rubrics is available in the book Notes on Miasms by Professor Sanchez Ortega. I think most of you might have read that book. And the chapter definition of symptoms in the book Notes on Miasms explains some of the show some best examples of rubric differentiation. In Notes on Miasm, the rubrics are differentiated according to the miasmatic criteria. But one differentiating criteria may not be applicable in all rubrics. So appropriate rubric may be selected for each and every group of rubrics according to the peculiarity. So now we are going to the subject proper. So I would like to tell all of you, just take a piece of paper and a pen. So I am not presenting you a slideshow. Actually, I did this presentation in a hurry within 2 days, and I didn't got enough time to make a presentation. So I request you to take a piece of paper and write down the rubrics alone. I don't want you to write all this down. Just take down the rubrics, and when I present a rubric or explain it, if there is any doubt, please let me know through this notes, and Dr. Nebu will let me know. And if
Okay,
possible, if possible, I will give an answer. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, I would like to find a rubric for a symptom expressed by a patient. Recently, 3 days ago, a patient came to my clinic. Actually, he has multiple diseases in the eye, but the main symptom is main pathology is retinitis pigmentosa. Actually, the patient has not come. His father come to my clinic. The patient is 31-year-old male. Now he is almost completely blind. The disease might have started around the age of 14 to 15 years, but it was not identifiable. And the disease was diagnosed around the age of 25 years while he was studying for his draftsmanship. He was a trained draftsman and he was working as a draftsman. Then gradually his vision deteriorated, and so he couldn't continue in his job as a draftsman. And so now he's working as an attender. He is almost completely blind. He has to take the help of someone to take him to the place of job and then back. So this one symptom that the father told me is that he's mild. He is mild. That's a symptom father told me. So considering his other symptoms, because disease might have started 14 to 15 years back, but he might be aware of the symptom, but he was not willing to trouble others with this symptom. He didn't complain his loss of vision to his father or parents, but it was founded by his classmates while he was staying in a hostel. They say that he cannot walk in the evening. He stumbles, especially when the light goes down. So his friends or hostel mates actually discovered his disease, and they informed the parents, and then this diagnosis was made. Now the patient is completely blind. So the symptom that the father told is mildness. So can we take this as mildness, rubric mildness? So that's the question. The patient, the bystander, what the common people say is mildness. So we cannot say take mildness as a rubric here. Why? We have to check in detail. Okay. There are actually 3 rubrics in the mental section alone that are very close to mildness in its meaning. One is mildness, second is yielding, and third is survive. You might have heard or used all these rubrics, right? So what I want to tell you is that we don't have to take mildness as a rubric when a patient comes to you and just don't show any aggression. That's not the symptom. That's not the way. Mildness, the rubric mildness is a combination of 2 concepts, that is polite or quiet nature with a definite element of submissiveness. See, polite or quiet nature with a definite element of submissiveness. So what might be the miasm? I'm not, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. As we all know, sorrow is a predominant miasm, but we see that there is an element of syphilis in this rubric because submissiveness always has a syphilitic element. So when it comes to mildness, the syphilitic element is very less. That's just polite or quiet nature. That is a rubric mildness. But yielding, there's a little more element of submissiveness or a little more element of syphilitic trait. So yielding means that the patient is polite or quiet, but he yields to pressure from others, especially those close to him. Not authority, those who are close to him. He yields to the pressure of those who are close to him. That is yielding. So when we look at the repertory, the medicines for somewhat similar medicines are there, but the number of medicines and a little bit difference in the number of medicines. And the third rubric is survive. That has the most submissive nature and so most element of syphilitic trait, that is survive. Survival is meanly submissive. That's the actual meaning of survival. Actually, in case of mildness and yielding, the patient may be having a symptom of their own, the idea, decision of their own. But in yielding, they're submissive. They are because of their submissiveness, they yield to the pressure of others. And in case of mildness also, they may be having an opinion of their own, but they may not argue to prove their idea. Another rubric that should be considered here is mind arguing, not arguing, convictions and keeping them despite of having from Silesia is a 3-mark single medicine. So that's a very cross-running remedy. So yielding person also has opinions, but he is ready to make amendments under reasonable persuasion from others. A servile person does not have an identity and so have no opinion of their own. Anybody can make him or her to do whatever they want. They do not have the courage to raise their voices. So another rubric that we considered is mind comply to the wishes of others. So these 3 rubrics, first of all, we are discussing the 3 rubrics: mildness, yielding, and servile. Mildness is just mild behavior. Yielding is yielding, mildness plus yielding to the pressure of others, and servile is meanly submissive. But in this patient, we cannot take all these 3 rubrics. Why? Why? Because he must be submissive, because he has some defective vision, so he have to depend on, he have to be submissive to some others. But that is not the rubric that is correct in this patient. So I have to take the cross reference of this mildness. So other cross reference are quiet disposition, resignation, and tranquility. So you have to write down the first symptom is mildness, second is yielding, third is servile. We have discussed the 3. If you have any doubts, please write in the chat box and Nebu will tell me. So first 3 rubrics are mildness, yielding, and gentle. I will repeat one more. Mildness is mild or quiet behavior, that's all. They might be having an opinion of their own, they may not be expressing. But yielding is they have an opinion of their own, but they fell to the pressure of his close ones. And servile is meanly submissive. They don't have an opinion of their own. So now we are going to discuss quiet disposition. Quiet disposition is also very close to mildness, but it does not have the submissive element. And resignation is a medicine rubric that is closely related to this. Resignation has only the submissive element. So under resignation, we can take in a patient who is submissive to his surroundings. He may be dejected, he may be having some depressions or some failures, and he is resigned to himself. Resignation is like a failure. He feels himself like a failure. That's a symptom of resignation. But it may seem like a mild nature. There is some major differences. Quiet disposition, okay, it's very related to mildness. And now we come to tranquility. Tranquility is a rubric that we can find in the repertory that is most suitable to this patient that I have discussed now. Tranquility actually is a symptom expressed by saints, sannyasis, who do all these tabas and all these things. This is a symptom of extreme mental strength. That is an expression of extreme mental strength. They may not be having any outward expression of aggression or anything like that, but they are having extreme mental strength. So tranquility is ability to keep quiet in midst of problems. That's a symptom of tranquility. So I selected this rubric to be for this patient. So because he knows there is a lot of problems in his life. He used to see the world and now he cannot see anything. So naturally, most of the patients or most of the people may feel very dejected and angry, or maybe some sort of symptoms. But this patient, the expression is very mild. He does not want to trouble others with the symptoms. So the other symptoms are there, no wants and no complaints. But tranquility seems the most appropriate rubric for this patient, because he expressed as mildness even in the midst of troubles. And when I looked down for the sub-rubric, I came to a sub-rubric, tranquility, reconciled to the fate. There are only 6 medicines in the rubric. I will tell. Contented and tranquility. Okay. Contented is also a rubric that is very similar. The rubric that I am going to discuss is tranquility, and the sub-rubric is tranquility reconciled to fate. That he understands his fate and he is, even though he is tranquil. That is a rubric. And only 6 medicines are there in this sub-rubric. Tranquility, reconciled to fate. You write down the rubric and check in the repertory. 6 medicines are there, and Stanamet is there, Aloes is there, Podophyllum is there, that are the medicines. But we cannot take this as a final rubric, but we can definitely use this as PDF. Okay, so the rubric I selected for this mildness as expressed by his father is tranquility, because he is calm in midst of troubles. So that is the difference between contented and tranquility. Contented means one is contented with what he have got, and tranquility is contented in midst of troubles. That may be the main difference between tranquility and contented. You may disagree with me, but if there is any disagreement, please let me know, so that I can clear my doubts also.
Hey, no problem, Doctor. You continue. Okay.
Okay. So the rubrics are we have discussed so far are mildness, yielding, servile, tranquility, quiet disposition, and then taciturn. Taciturn is another symptom that there is very close to tranquility. Taciturn, actually the word meaning is habitually silent. That's all. Habitually silent. But usually it is used in a negative sense. We take this rubric as very close to irritability. And irritable, yeah, I will tell about contented. Okay, irritability, taciturn actually comes a little before irritability. Taciturn means that he does not express the irritability, but he is irritable. That even though it is silent nature or mild nature, it's close related to irritability. So taciturn cannot be taken here. Here the patient is not irritable. Contented, I told once, but contented can be taken. For example, a business person, he is contented with his business. He does not want to go further. He is contented with what he have got. That is contented. But here the patient is in a position of loss. He lost his vision. Then even then he is mild. That's why I take tranquility as a rubric. And anxiety conscience is a totally different rubric. That is, if you have done something wrong, and wherever this same thought that you have done something wrong, then it comes to your mind, that's the symptom for anxiety conscience, or otherwise guilty feeling. That is anxiety conscience. That cannot be clubbed with tranquility. Anyway, we can discuss that also here. So mildness, yielding, servile, tranquility, quiet disposition, taciturn, and reserved. These are the rubrics that can be considered for this patient. I'm not discussing the patient as a whole. I'm discussing that the single term that his father told me, mildness. He is very mild. So we have to find a rubric for this mildness. I'm not going any further. But knowing his personality, we can arrive at the decision that tranquility may be the rubric that is aptly selected, that can be selected for this patient. And the sub-rubric that very closely related to this patient is tranquility reconciled to fate. But as the medicines are only 6, we have to keep this aside as PDF, potential differentiating field. So silent disposition and taciturn. Okay, taciturn I already discussed.
After your talk, we can have that differentiation.
Either okay.
Will be disturbing.
So, Debu, one more thing. Debu.
Yes.
Dr. Debu, give an intimation at every 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so that I can plan my further discussions. Okay.
Okay.
So my first portions were dealing with mildness, and the rubric that we've arrived is tranquility. And now we go to somewhat exactly opposite to this rubric, mildness. So here the patient that I have discussed in the first case is not complaining, not complaining. Now we are going to other set of rubrics that we get at least one or two in a daily practice. Sensories or critical. Sensories critical is actual rubric that can be used criticizing nature. So the main rubric is censorious, and two other rubrics are also there in the repertory, very closely related to censorious. So I think you noted down 7 rubrics, right? Mildness, yielding, servile, tranquil, quiet disposition, taciturn, reserved, contented. 8 rubrics, right? So the 9th rubric is censorious. Censorious critical, cynical, and reproaching others are the close running rubrics that are present in the repertory. Even though they are very related, there is some marked difference in the meaning. All of these rubrics are fault finding, right? Fault finding nature. A censorious person is always vigilant to find fault in others. It is true that if such a person criticizes someone, there must be some fault from the other side. But the bad part of this criticism is that it is not with good intention. The criticizer's intention is neither to create a better situation nor to correct the faulty person. His sole intention is to expose the fault or the faulty person. The underlying phenomena may be a superiority complex or a purposeful display of superiority to mask an inferiority complex. I think you got what I said. Yeah. Censorious person is very egoistic. He finds faults in others, and he let them know that he found such and such fault in such a person. That's the nature of censorious. Censorious always find faults. And cynic, the rubric can be taken, we mostly take in the case of old people. So cynic is one who creates his own reasons to assert any deeds which may be beneficial to many as blameworthy. So they criticize someone, maybe because some action from other side may not be good to him, but actually there may not be any errors. I would like to repeat, in case of censorious, if a censorious person criticizes someone, there must be some fault. But in case of cynic, there may not be any fault, but he like to criticize. So they enjoys criticizing. A cynic enjoys criticizing, but a censorious person considers it as his duty to criticize. That's the difference. Censorious and cynic. A cynic person wants to criticize anything or everybody for no reason. The subject may not have any association with the criticizer, but he enjoys criticizing. That's the word. He enjoys criticizing. The symptom is commonly seen in unhappy old people, but is also expressed in other age groups also. So, as we discussed in the first part, as most of the old people express this symptom, we are not going to take this rubric for all old people. Only if this symptom is very clearly present, we can take this as him or her as a cynic. Otherwise, we can leave the symptom. So the third rubric is reproaching others. Reproaching others can be used for patients who relate the cause of their sickness or their complaints to the errors of other people. But no one will be able to find a logic connection between the so-called cause and the effect. I have a patient here. Whenever he tells some symptom, maybe physical or mental, what he says that the reason for this is my father. He used to do this, and you used to do that, and so that's why I became such a mean person. That's the exact words of that patient. So reproaching others, there is no fault from the others, there may not be, but he finds some excuses for his weaknesses. No one will be able to find a logical connection between the so-called cause and effect as expressed by the patient. Reproaching others may be the common theme in these three rubrics are exalted ego complex and discontentment with the faults of others. So we can say that, I can say that ego is exalted in case of censorious, cynical, and reproaching others. They think that they are above others, and along with that, they cannot tolerate the faults of others. In the first rubric, that is censorious, there must be faults from others. In the second rubric, that is cynical, there might be some faults from others. But while in the third rubric, there may not be any fault at all, but the patient blames others so that first to make an excuse or to escape from taking responsibility. Other rubrics that are related to CR, these rubrics are talking faults of others, jesting malicious. Maybe you heard about jesting. Jesting is a mocking, somewhat like a mocking. Jesting malicious, with malicious motive, that is jesting malicious. Here, the patients may take advantage of the faults of others, but they do this without the intention of boosting their ego. In censorious, a person criticizes others not only to let others know that some person is faulty, but his other intention is, I'm above you, I'm above others. He is showing his superiority also. Contemptuous is another rubric that can be considered here. Actually, contemptuous is a main rubric that can be used along with haughtiness for ego. In contemptuous, whether or not the other person or around the patient, whether or not there is not any fault, he is looking down on others. That's the rubric. That's where we use contemptuous. So, the symptoms that we have, rubrics we have discussed are censorious, cynical, reproaching others, mocking sarcasm. Yeah, mocking sarcasm is a rubric with less number of medicine. This clearly explains, self-explanatory. Talking faults of others, jesting malicious, self-explanatory. We don't have. And contemptuous. Contemptuous is looking down on people. So there may not be any problem or problem with other people, but he is having a superiority complex. That's the reason. But in case of contemptuous, etc., we have to understand that the patient is actually superior. There may be a superior feeling in the patient, maybe a wrong feeling, but he is definitely feeling superior. That's why he expressed such a symptom, contemptuous. But in censorious, actually, it may be an expression of inferiority complex. For example, a man in position, when he lost some position, he criticizes his followers. That may be due to his inferiority complex, maybe due to his loss of position. So censorious may not be, or definitely not due to a superiority feeling. Actually, they express their superiority. It has they express it as superiority to cover their weakness or inferiority feeling. Okay. So these two sets of rubrics that we have discussed. One set is mild, and the other set is opposite, showing your superiority feeling. Now, another case, I would like to discuss another case, and I'm not discussing the symptoms in full, but the patient came to me at the age of around 70 plus years. So in his life situation, he is from Kerala, and in his youth, around 25 years, he was working in a factory in North India or somewhere in other parts of the country. And there, when he was sitting with his friends, one Gunda of that region came and attacked his friend. And on seeing that, the Gunda caught the collar of his friend and a dagger in the Gunda's hand. The patient suddenly jumped, took the dagger from the Gunda and killed him. And overnight he came to Kerala, escaped from there. And then after coming to Kerala, do some regular works, and now he's 70 years old. So he came for, I think, for urinary complaint, BPH or something like that. So this is one symptom that I got, and a recent incident that I got from him is that there was some problem in his locality related to a funeral, and here also some Gunda-like person entered into the group and started to threaten. And all of the young members were keeping silent, fearing this Gunda. But all of a sudden, this man, around 70 plus man, started arguing with the man and then beat this man. So this is a second incident. So what the symptom that we can take in this patient? One symptom. So that we are going to discuss now. The symptom that comes into our mind is, yeah, what may be the symptom? What does it is?
I can.
Yeah. Courageous. Anyway, it's like, yeah, impulsive. Yeah. Okay.
Audacity, injustice, anarchist.
Yeah. Okay. So we can discuss it in detail. So anyway, this is an expression of courage, right? Yeah, all the rubrics that you have discussed are expression of courage. So we have to differentiate between courageous, fearless, audacity, impulsive, and all that. Okay.
It's about 15 minutes we are going. Okay, first.
Pardon?
You have told me to limit you in 15 minutes now. It is around 15 minutes now. Okay, first.
First 15 minutes over, right?
Okay.
Okay. Just 1 minute. So we are going to discuss courageous as the main theme. Courage, yes, should be the main theme that we are going to discuss. So the main theme connecting all these rubrics is courage. Courageous, fearless, audacity, then adventurous, temerity, rash. I think you can write down first rubric is courageous, second is audacity, third is fearless, fourth is adventurous, and fifth is temerity, and then rash. These are the rubrics that we are going to discuss. Courage is a firmness of mind and will in the face of danger or extreme difficulty. So we can say that this, when I discuss fifth or sixth rubric, I will repeat, courageous, fearless. Courageous is a rubric with 50 plus remedies. Fearless is a rubric with 25 plus remedies. Adventurous is a small rubric with only 5 remedies. Audacity is somewhat larger rubric, 50 plus remedies. Mind rash is another rubric with 20 plus remedies. And temerity, T-E-M-E-R-I-T-Y. Temerity is another rubric with 11 rubrics. Courageous can be taken for firmness of mind and will in the face of danger or extreme difficulty. That's the actual word meaning for courageous. Fearless, there is no need of any explanation, but we can differentiate in the later part. Adventurous is exposing oneself to danger more than required by good sense. Exposing oneself to danger. Audacity is daring boldness. Disregard of restraints commonly imposed by convention or prudence. Rash is imprudence or lack of forethought. Lack of thought. Temerity suggests boldness arising from rashness and contempt for danger. All these rubrics are marked by the expression of fearlessness and courage. Fearlessness and courage. The fearlessness rubric itself same tell it is fearlessness. But in the first 3 rubric or 4 rubrics, that is courageous, fearless, audacity, and adventurous. The courage is real. The courage is real, and the expression of courage varies according to the situation and the miasmatic predominance of the subject. That I will explain. So, actually in these 4 rubrics, there is actual boldness. Okay. First 4 rubrics, that is courageous, fearless, audacity, and adventurous. In these 4 rubrics, there will be actual boldness or actual courage. And the difference is in the miasmatic expression. So, depending upon the miasmatic predominance of the subject, the expression will be different. That's the thing. Not only on the miasmatic expression, the situation. The situation demanding the symptom determines the expression. But in last 2 rubrics, rashness and temerity, the courage is not real. That is foolish courageousness out of ignorance. That's the actual word. Temerity and rashness. There is no courage. They are doing rash actions because of this lack of thought. That is the difference. Fearlessness is the basic symptom, as it is an inborn characteristic of the individual. That I've told in the first part that we have to take a symptom, a mental symptom. It might be an inborn characteristic of the patient, or maybe a acquired one. So fearlessness, if you have to take, it is an inborn character of the patient. This rubric is to be considered when the subject is fearless in all actions and situations, but may be purposeless. That's the main differentiating point between fearlessness and courageous. It's an expression, inborn characteristic, but there is no purpose. The miasmatic background of the rubric is Sora with a definite psychotic element and a little trace of syphilitic miasm. I'm not going to go deep into the miasmatic explanation. It will take a little more time. We have to finish it in 1 hour. So I'm not going deep. But one thing I can say, if you read the book Notes on Miasm, you will understand that psychotic miasm, it is an outward expression or exaggerated expression, that is psychotic miasm. And syphilitic miasm, whatever the expression is, it ultimately brings damage to the patient or those around him. So that's miasmatic influence here. So fearless is the most basic rubric, and we can take fearless mostly in children, right? Their actions and behavior. When we get such children, we can take fearless in children. But courageous is applicable if the subject is known to take risk with a definite purpose in order to save someone, etc. It has a little more contribution from the psychotic miasm, so it has more outward expression of courage. So fearless with a lot more expression is courage. If I'm not wrong, fearless, a fearless patient with a lot more expression, we can take courageous as a rubric. Adventurous implies a willingness to accept risk, but not necessarily imprudence. It has more psychotic shade than the rubric courageous, and here the motive of the subject in doing anything is to display his ability, and so he will take calculated risks to heighten his image in front of others. So if you are talking whether it is purposeful or not, there might be a purpose, but the purpose is to heighten his image in front of others. He is courageous, otherwise he won't take such action. One example that I will take is in circus there is the circus ring, where people ride bikes at high speed in globe, something like that. It's a that needs extra courage, right? So that is a symptom, that rubric that can be taken. That is adventurous. So in adventurous, the person is courageous and he wants to express his ability to others, and so he take calculated risks and he do some practices to display his ability in front of others. Audacity is a last rubric of that group. Is psychosis with a considerable degree of syphilitic trait. Here the bravery is genuine. The patient is genuinely brave, and there will be a purpose, but hasty and often thoughtless implementation may lead to destruction of himself and others. And I will explain. A person rescuing his own relatives or friends from danger can be termed courageous. The rubric that can be taken for such a patient is courageous. Am I right? A person rescuing his or her own relatives or friends from danger is courageous. And a person doing risky rescue works for the people who are unknown to him should be considered audacious. You might have seen one video clip recently of some illegal immigrant from Mali rescuing a person, or a little child from the third floor of a building. Have you seen that video? So actually, the rubric for that illegal immigrant, that little boy, is audacity. He take actually he didn't thought further, didn't think further. He just jumped into the building and rescued the child. He never thought about his own danger or anything like that. That is audacity. Actually, when he rescued the child, he became well and good. But whether there was a failure, actually there will be two deaths, on the child and second the rescue. So that is the difference between courageous and audacity. In audacity, the patient takes risk without thinking further. That is audacity. But actually, these audacious people are usually very helpful nature. Mountaineers, rope walkers, snake charmers, etc. should be considered adventurous as they are prepared to take risks, but with constant practice so that they can show their mettle to others. So, recently in Kerala, you might have read a newspaper cutting that a snake charmer died very recently, last week, right? Actually, there might be some problem with his training. He may be adventurous. Adventurous is a rubric that can be used for such people. But actually, there is some other person that are very trained in pulling out the snakes, and they may be tamed audacious. So, courageous, audacity, and adventurous. And rashness, another rubric that we can discuss along with this courageous and audacity is rash. An example is motorists who habitually break speed limits and do careless driving rash. It's not courage. Their actions are thoughtless. So it is not actual courage. So rashness is a rubric that can be taken for them. And motor racing experts riding in controlled environment with adequate precautions are adventurous. The rubric for them is adventurous. They want to show off their courage and their ability. So adventurous is a rubric. So among the 6 rubrics, first 4 rubrics, fearless, courageous, adventurous, and audacity, are directly related to courage, and the difference is in the execution. In audacity, there is sudden or violent execution disregarding the consequences. The patient is not thinking about the consequences and do such actions. So that is a rubric that can be used for the patients who are expressing such symptoms are audacious. So if you remember my patient, audacity is a symptom that can be used for such a person, right? He is courageous, all right, but he is not thinking about his consequences while he was using a dagger to kill that. Actually, he was not planning to kill that gunda, but he done that. So actually, impulsive is another cross-running rubric that can be discussed here. Impulsive. It's an impulsive behavior. But if there is no courage, he cannot do such a thing. Impulsive, suppose a person throws things in anger, that is impulsive. Or suppose suddenly do something, it's impulsive. And another rubric that can be considered is abruptness. Abrupt is a rubric that is seen in the first page also. It's abrupt. And there is a difference between impulsive and abrupt. So I think you got the difference. In audacity, the action is sudden or thoughtless, but courage is there. Courage is the main feature of audacity. But in case of impulsiveness, courage is not a factor. The sudden or thoughtless implementation of something, that what comes into his mind, that's a rubric for impulsive. And abrupt means that it's somewhat like a jerky movement, jerky action. That is abrupt. Sudden reactions, a little more sudden than impulsive. But actually, it's not always negative, but in some time it can be taken as a negative feature, like answering abruptly. This is a sub-rubric of abrupt. Abrupt may be a broad rubric, but answering abruptly. When somebody asks you a question and you give sudden abrupt answer, that is abrupt, answering abrupt. So that are the symptoms that can be considered along with rashness. Temerity is also a rubric, but I think only 11 rubrics are there in the rubrics temerity. That is foolish courageous. There is no actual boldness. He shows some kind of courageousness. Rash is a little more larger rubrics, 20 remedies. So these are the rubrics that we have discussed. Courageous, adventurous, audacity. So the patient, the rubric I selected for this 70-year-old patient is audacity. Even though he has some bad feelings about it later, the rubric for him is audacity. Okay. If you have any doubt or any mistakes, please try.
Yeah, we have some doubts there.
Yeah.
A
So I can
soldier
see
saving life is audacious or not?
one more thing. Please one more. Please repeat one more.
A soldier who is saving life is audacious or not?
Not. He is courageous. He is doing his duty. He is doing. I explained in the meaning of courageous that courage is applicable if a subject is known to take risk with a definite purpose in order to save someone, etc. So, if a patient saves his family members or his close relatives or those nearer to him, that becomes courageous. The same is the case with a soldier. A soldier's duty is to save someone, so he must be termed courageous, not audacity. But if he takes some extra moves, then only it can be considered as audacious.
Okay.
Okay. If any more doubts are there,
Yeah, the doubts are keep coming. The difference between impulsive and impetus.
impetus, yeah.
Impetus.
Actually, I'm not right now. I'm not prepared enough to give an answer. Impetuous and impulsive. There's I will tell later. Okay.
Okay. Difference between
Okay.
rashness and temerity.
Okay. Rashness is irresponsible action. Take the example of a motor racist. In normal roads, we are not supposed to ride bikes in a 100 plus kilometer speed. So if someone rides, do such an action, it can be termed rashness, rash behavior. Temerity is like without training. Suppose a snake charmer do some activities because he is trained, and if a normal person tries to do something, that is temerity, not adventurous, right? A
Okay.
trained person doing something becomes adventurous, and a foolish person imitates such a things, it becomes the rubric can be temerity. Okay.
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 Then it's around 3:20, so we can have our next 50 minutes over. We have around
20 minutes,
half an hour more. No problem.
half an hour. Okay. Then I think we can discuss one more group of rubrics, and then we can wait for the discussions. Okay. So the next rubric that we regularly see in our clinics is fastidious, right? There may not be a homeopathic physician who didn't took this rubric for his selection, at least one of his cases. Fastidious is a rubric that we can take along with, that can be discussed along with one fastidious. Second is carefulness. Third is conscientious about trifles. Conscientious about trifles. Then rest cannot when everything's are not in proper. There is smaller rubrics, but the main rubrics are fastidious, carefulness, conscientious about trifles. And other rubrics that can be discussed are disorder sensitive, order desire for, proper to, is too proper. The rubric is proper to. Trifles important, discuss dirt with, delusion dirty he's. So these are the rubrics that the next group that we are going to discuss. So the first set of rubrics that we discussed are related to mildness, and the second set were related to censorious nature, that is criticizing nature, and the third set that we have discussed are related to courage. And now we are dealing with order or neediness. Okay. The first three rubrics, that is fastidious, carefulness, and conscientious about trifles. These three rubrics deal with proper and orderly execution of any job or action. Proper and orderly execution of any job or action. They differ only in the intensity. All these rubrics are applicable in subjects who are seriously involved in their business with respect to cleanliness, preciseness, and proper order. They take extreme care to make their work perfect by giving special attention to even finer aspects. So these four rubrics are very closely related, and the difference is in the intensity. It's not the miasm or something like that. It is in the intensity of their expression that these four rubrics are differentiated. Of this, carefulness is the most basic symptom that should be considered in subjects who are reasonably alert in their activities. In case of children, if present, this rubric is an observable mental symptom, right? Mental symptom that can be observed. Usually, children, we consider them to be not that much careful. But carefulness, if a little child express such a symptom, if as told by the parents, if you get such a symptom, that can definitely be included in the analysis. We will be able to select this rubric simply observing such children. But we have to differentiate cautious here, carefulness and cautious. Cautious is another rubric that has been differentiated. Here in cautious, the subject is taking care to avoid dangerous situation and so has no connection with the perfectionistic attitude of the rubric, carefulness. So in cautious, the patient or the child is trying to avoid dangerous situation, but in carefulness, it has nothing to do with dangerous situation. So carefulness. I got this symptom from children who use extreme carefulness. So a symptom become peculiar when it is expressed in a non-peculiar group. I will discuss later. The second rubric that we are going to discuss is conscientious about trifles. It's a degree higher to carefulness, a little bit higher than the carefulness, a little more careful. A degree higher to carefulness where the subject gives importance even to the minor factors to highlight the central idea. So, I will give an example. Suppose taking this class, if I present a well orderly PowerPoint presentation, that can be used as a rubric for conscientious about trifle. And along with that, if I add some beautiful pictures to invite your attention to this class, that becomes more attracted to conscientious about trifles. So actually, what the patient do is to heighten the central idea by giving importance to smaller details. So the subject gives importance even to the minor factors to highlight the central idea. But there is another rubric, somewhat very similar, but that is totally different. Trifles seem important is a cross reference where The person is giving more importance to trivial matters, ignoring the main central matters. Okay. Conscientious about trifle. Conscientious about trifle. Here the patient gives more care to his subject, his work, by giving importance to even minor factors to make a perfect outcome for his work. But trifles seem important is a totally different rubric where the subject gives importance to trivial matters, ignoring the main theme. For example, a doctor going to the clinic, instead of taking a stethoscope, it uses a tie to heighten his image. I'm just giving a wild example. Otherwise, if I'm going to take you a class, instead of preparing a good slide, if I am going to detail makeup and all that, that is a rubric. Trifles seem more important. So there, the central idea is kept aside and giving more importance to less important matters. That's a rubric. Trifles seem important, and the rubric for carefulness or more carefulness is conscientious about trifles. So we have discussed about anxiety concerns, right? In the first session, anxiety concerns can be taken for guilty consciousness. Okay, and first it is. So first carefulness, second conscientious about trifle, and now first it is. First it is has a wider meaning. It is often referred in connection with cleanliness or order. This rubric is selected for the persons who strive for perfection in a passionate way. They are concerned about order and cleanliness, not only of their personal matters, but also in the society. Although they may not express it openly, they are disturbed by the lack of order and neatness in every situation they are faced. So we regularly get some patients with this first rubric, first it is. Most of the time, actually the patient does not express the symptom, only the bystanders say that. In their home, the main problem, the main reason for a fight is their fastidiousness. They won't allow others to touch their table or any possessions of them. They are very particular about the neatness, and the more than neatness, the order. They are more concerned about the order. That's the first rubric, fastidious. But for a fastidious person, they are never satisfied. Capriciousness, that's the rubric that can be considered. But here, fastidious, it means that they are very peculiar or particular about order and neatness, etc. Rest cannot rush when everything is not in proper place is extreme case of fastidiousness where the subject himself corrects the disordered situation. So that's the topmost rubric. Rest cannot rest when things are not in proper place. Even though the patient is very weak, they won't rest until they are finished their job. Fastidious cannot be taken for an OCD patient. That's totally different. That is maybe mania for cleaning or something, rubrics, not for OCD. Okay. Other rubrics that are related to this section is disorder sensitive and order desire. So when we think about Calica, the symptom that comes into mind is order desire. They want everything in perfect order. They obey all rules, and they would like others to do also. So they become angry when somebody violates the rules, etc. That's a rubric for order desire. And some smaller rubrics are there, like disgust dealt with, delusions dirty, etc. So these rubrics related with dirt and not with a particular job or their general nature. So the general 4 rubrics related to the basic nature is carefulness, conscientious about trifle. Carefulness is the first stage. A little more becomes conscientious about trifles, then fastidious, and the topmost portion is the rest cannot rest. Smaller rubric. We usually use fastidious, conscientious about trifles, and carefulness. These 3 rubrics are the rubrics that we commonly consider. Proper 2 is another rubric. I've discussed about Kalika. The rubric is applicable in people who are very refined in their interaction with others, giving due importance to rules and codes of conduct. That is too proper. So these are the rubrics, the 4 sets of symptoms that we have discussed, and some rubrics. And I think now we can go for discussions. And if time permits, some more rubrics.
Okay. So I think some how can we take the rubric fastidious in OCD patients?
Yeah, it cannot be taken for OCD patients. For OCD patients, it's a compulsive behavior. It can be the rubric that can be used in an OCD patient is repetitive behavior, maybe repetitive behavior, not fastidious. Fastidious is an inherent nature that cannot be considered as a negative trait. We consider fastidious because if it is very clearly present in the patient, we can take, but it cannot be taken for an OCD.
The voice something.
Pardon? Yeah. It cannot be taken for an. Yeah. What about now?
If a person is acting extrovert outside and absolutely quiet at home, so what is the rubric?
Yeah. Extrovert. I'm not sure whether there's a rubric extrovert.
It can be due to any reason, na?
Yeah. But the rubric very close related is let me say. Speech also. There is one particular rubric. I'll tell you. I will tell you that rubric. That be very friendly and outgoing in the actually in expression, but actually he is very sad. That's the symptom, right? Right?
Yeah.
I will tell. No, it's not apathy. I will tell the exact symptom. I just not remembering it now. I think it starts with an A, letter A. Affectionate.
But if a person is acting extrovert outside and absolutely quiet at home, what is the rubric? That is.
Yeah, affectation, not affectation, affectionate. Affectation can be taken for that rubric.
Yeah.
Affectation is artificial behavior for impressing others. Artificial behavior by a person for impressing others. That is affectation. So that can be the rubric that can be taken. There is some sub-rubrics like affectation in speech. For example, they use particular words.
Indifference to loved ones are the option one.
For what? May not be there. May not be that.
Disorder, sensitive, and order, desire for.
Yeah, very close related rubrics. Sensitivity to disorder and order, very close running remedy rubrics. Very difficult to differentiate.
Apathy.
Pardon?
Apathy.
Apathy is indifference itself. Indifference is a very related to indifference.
Okay. Why can't we take intolerance to injustice in previous case?
Okay. The case of fastidious, right? Or audacity.
I think the cruelty case was. I think the killing that case may be.
Okay. Audacity. Injustice cannot support. Okay. It's a very good question. So injustice cannot support is an inherent nature. Yeah. Actually, courage is not the element of that case. Injustice cannot support. The patient cannot tolerate anything that is wrongly done. Actually, what I see is that some such patients express injustice when react when some injustice are done towards their fellow people, not to themselves, not to the patient as such, but when some injustice is being done to some person who are very weak than themselves, they will express. That's a symptom that I usually get. The actual meaning is injustice cannot support. They cannot tolerate any wrongdoing from others. It cannot be coupled with courage. That is something to be related to superiority feeling or superior nature, right? not courage. I think so.
Rubric for killing others. Since I didn't follow the rules, I think cruelty is she's asking.
Yeah, cruelty. Kill desire for. I think there's a rubric. Kill.
Yeah, kill desire for is a rubric. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a rubric.
Differences between absent-minded, abstraction, and fancies absorbed.
Okay. I will discuss that too. Absent-minded, abstraction of, and absent-minded, absorbed, and abstraction of mind are the first three rubrics.
Fancies absorbed.
Okay. These are the first cross-running rubrics in the repertory. So, how many time we have left, Nebu?
I think we are already running out of time. We can move on 10 minutes more. No problem.
Okay. Then I will just say in a single word. No thought is abstraction. Single thought is absorbed, and many thoughts absent-minded. Let me explain. If a person attend to a situation here, suppose a person is attending this class, if he is attended to a single thought, suppose the patient is attending a class and he is thinking about the food being prepared in his home, he is not attending to the class being taught in the seminar, and he is thinking only about this food. So the rubric that can be used is absorbed. I'm taking it in a funny way. So the rubric is absorbed because only single thought comes into the mind of the subject, that is food. So he is not attending to his surroundings. But second person, he is thinking about many things. How can he go home after the class? What will the food? And how many friends he are going to talk with, and what all things he are going to do. He has many thoughts in his mind, and so he is not attending to the class. So many thoughts in his mind, and so he is attending to the class, that is absent-minded. And abstraction of mind is a little more difficult because it's a pathological symptom. If it is expressed in a patient, it means that there is some deep pathology in the patient. Abstraction of mind is no thought. I would like to explain one of the patient. The patient was going to cross a road. It's a busy street, and the patient was going to cross the road. Then suddenly a bus came, and so she stopped there. Then the bus gone, but the patient is still staying there. He forgot what she was doing. She forgot what she was doing. A good example is seen in Ken's lectures on nutrimedia, I think in Nexamos Ketta. A housewife doing all these things in his household course, and when suddenly takes her for some minute, and she forgets what all things she was being doing. That these are the better example for abstraction of mind. That is, no thought in the mind, and he is not attending to the present situation. So all these rubrics can be taken when the patient is not attending to the present situation, but he is somewhere else. If there is no thought, that's a pathological symptom, that is abstraction of mind. And he was is absorbed in a single thought. That's usually seen in case of geniuses. They may be thinking seriously about some other factors, but they are not attending to the present situation. That is absorbed. And absent mind is a very common symptom, that we are interested in many things and we are not attending to the present situation. That is the basic difference between these three rubrics. Okay.
Then person who don't want to or don't need to ask any help from others.
Yeah. No wants and no complaints. There is a rubric like that. No wants and no complaints. Customer wants to pester others with his complaints.
No help from others. No help from others. That is she's asking.
Yeah, I think independent. There's a rubric for independent. I'm not sure about it. I think independent. That's a rubric. Ego, haughty, egotic. That's rubric, but it may not. A haughty person depends on others, but it shows in a different angle. They take help from others, haughty and egotic people, but they show their egotism. That's all.
Okay. Mortification and indignation difference.
Yeah. I'll take an example. From a group of certain friends, males and females, very close friends, and one boy molested a girl among the group, And if that girl slaps on his face and express anger, that can be taken as indignation. But other girl may take it in her mind and weeps when alone and being shut from outside. He sit behind herself and does not mingle again. That's a symptom mortification. So in the first indignation, there is anger. In anger and mortification, there is element of anger. Both are expressions of anger. But in mortification, the subject, the offended person feel inferior. She considered that it was due to his fault that he is being offended. So he suffers for the insult from others. But indignation, the insult is there and the patient responds. That's the difference between indignation and mortification.
Okay. Then so many questions are coming.
Yeah, so it's a very short session, and
for some can have a second session, no problem, sir.
Yeah, and it's a short presentation, and I was not very well prepared, but I will try to give an answer.
Okay, so we can wind up the session, sir. No problem.
Okay, so I would like to conclude this session. So mental symptoms are to be taken only if it is clearly present. We have not to produce a synthetic mental symptom. We have to say not to give
my mouthpiece.
Yeah. So I would like to tell again that we are not to give overimportance to mental symptoms. Mental symptoms are to be taken only if it is clear. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think the voice is a bit low. No.
Yeah. Now, can you hear me? Okay. So we are concluding. Can you hear me, Nebu?
Yeah.
Hello.
I can.
Hello. Yeah. Okay.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. We are not forced to take a mental symptom for each and every case that we are dealing with. If there is a clear symptom, we have to find a correct rubric. Instead of finding a large rubric, try to find a sub-rubric that is most apt to the patient, and so that we can arrive at a clear remedies. But keep in mind that if it's a small rubric of less than say 5 or 6 remedies, we are not supposed to use it for analysis, but we can be used for potential differentiating field. After analysis, we can differentiate from this PDF rubric for the apt rubric. So without giving overimportance to the mental symptoms, we can study well. So only if you are studying well, we can find a sub-rubric. Otherwise, we may, in case of the first rubric that we have discussed, tranquility, and the sub-rubric is reconcile to the fate. Only when I look into the repertory that I
the voice is going very slow.
Yeah. Only when I look into the repertory, I could find the sub-rubric reconcile to the fate. Otherwise, I would have stuck onto the tranquility. So if we study the repertory properly, we can find a lot of interesting symptom that fits to our patient. Then we can help the patient. Thank you very much for the patient listening. Thank you.
I think that was a very vast session to cover within 1 hour. We need around 10 or 6 or 5 classes for cover everything. So it was a very nice presentation, sir. And I'm really thankful to you because we approached you for around 2 days back. Actually, we had another session. We might be thinking of to make a class in the another Hope series. So it was a great session and plenty of the doubts were cleared. And we are expecting more sessions from you. So on behalf of IHMA Ernakulam District Committee, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and thanks to Dr. Nebu for taking such a wonderful session. So we are winding up the session. We have another session by differentiation of pediatric behavior disorders in children with emphasis on different groups of Mathew medica like Spider Snake by Dr. Syed VH, an experienced clinician from Ernakulam. So also I also request everybody to be present for that too. And by Monday we are winding up our session, and we have some prime sessions, exclusive sessions for tomorrow. So wait for it. Please subscribe our WhatsApp and Telegram channel. Thank you.